again. This is Libby Lehman, your guest host for Name That Stitch. Can you guess this stitch? I'll give you a hint. It's one of Alex's favorite stitches for raw edge applique. This is actually on the Bernina. It is stitch number 3, and it looks a lot like the blind hem stitch, but it's not. It is called the Varilock stitch. And if you'll come back to the machine, I want to show you the difference. On this episode, you're actually going to get a triple header because I want to show you 3 stitches that are very kissing cousin, very closely related. This is stitch number 3, and it's the Varilock. Its more common relative on the Bernina is stitch number 9. It's the blind hem stitch. A lot of people like to use this stitch for applique, but if you'll notice on the blind hem stitch, it takes a stitch into the fabric, and then it takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then takes another bite in. The reason Alex prefers the Varilock is you get more bites into your applique. It takes 2 stitches, then a bite, and then 2 more stitches, and then a bite. You can vary the width on this. You can mirror image it to get it on whatever side you want. But I agree with Alex. It is great for sewing around the edge of an applique. Now let me show you this. Let's go back to the original setting. The default stitch length is 1.5. You can vary that. The width is 4.5. You can vary that. If you're doing an applique where you do not want the applique stitches to show, you might want to go to a longer stitch and a narrow stitch. I find for most applique, 1.5 to 2 is about right. Wider than that, it's going to show more. Narrower than that, you're likely to miss the fabric. So I find a sweet spot is about 1.5 to 2, and just leave it on the default stitch length. Now I want to show you this stitched out, and then I'll show you some samples. I'm going to slow this down a little bit. Can you see that it's taking 2 stitches and then biting into the fabric? 2 and biting in. Now one of the neat features about a Bernina and some of the other top-of-the-line machines is you have the ability to move the needle position. So I could actually move this clear over to the left. I could line my applique edge up with the left side of the foot, and then when I'm doing the applique, it is biting into it, and the applique is right along the edge. Now let me show you this on an actual applique. I just happen to have a lovely fused design here. I spent hours on this copyright design, but I wanted to show you this. If I'm on the left side of this leaf shape, I want to move my needle over to the left, and I'm going to start my stitch, and you can see here it's taking 2 stitches and then just biting in. And I have the machine right now on a very slow speed so that you can see this up close. Can you see how it's doing that? If I was on the right side of this shape, I would have the needle on the right. Now I want to go to that number 9, the blind hem stitch, and show you the same thing. I'll turn it to the same width of 2. I'm going to mirror image it and move the needle over. And now let's see what happens with this one. Takes 4 stitches and then bites into it. So you can see that you just don't get as much applique down. Now let me go to the board and I'll show you some samples of this. What I want to show you now are just some samples of varying this stitch and also the blind hem stitch. If you'll come down to the board, most of the time when you have applique, you don't want it to show. If you look around the edge here, you really can't see the stitching. That's because I have done this stitching with monofilament thread that does not show, and I've used a very narrow stitch. I wanted to show you on this sample over here, this is using that stitch number 9, and you can see that there's more space between these bites. Now you might want to use that if you want it to look like a cactus or something like that. I've also used a variegated thread on this one. Sometimes I really do want the stitching to show. Here's stitch number 3, the very overlock, but I have made the stitch length very short. This is a stitch length of 0.75, and I've changed the width as I sew. So here I'm doing a wider stitch. I narrow it down until when I get to the point, I'm on a 0 stitch width. This sure helps to get around a sharp point like that. After I pivot, I increase the width coming back out. And finally, here is one done similar to the number 9. This is on the default setting for the number 3 stitch, and you can see there's 2 stitches and then a bite in, 2 stitches, a bite in. So I hope you'll go take a bite out of applique with the very overlock, Alex's favorite, stitch number 3. See you next time.